All right, hi everybody. My name is Mike Shipley, and I'm currently running for chair of the National Libertarian Party. And I am here today to participate in the launch of the Golden Quills Libertarian Club. And I just want to say that Brianna, you've done an amazing job with this event tonight. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. I'm very honored to be here, so thank you. So let me just launch right in. We heard some great comments from Deborah Altman earlier about the culture shift that she's been part of in the New York City government here. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a culture shift too. Actually, not a little bit, a lot. And before I jump into this, I just want to let you know I'm going to name some names. I'm not naming names because I'm attacking those people. I'm going to talk about like the ideas behind them, and there's going to be a reason for this. So a little bit about me. I have overcome a lot of challenges in my life, right? And one of the things that I learned about those is kind of looking, after surviving a lot of really dark things, and finally learning how to kind of find the hope in them and to take personal responsibility for them and like turn towards the hopefulness and like lean into it. Right? And when that happened for me, it started to improve my life in more and more ways. And as an activist, I learned that I could kind of look at the world around me and apply that same ethic of taking responsibility for the challenges around me and not letting them like be something that overwhelms me and presses me down, but that like inspires me to find inside myself the strength to overcome that. So I guess the first name to name is to come back to Brianna, right? I see in her work that she's doing that. So she's looking at the state of the New York City Libertarian Party and she's going, I'd like to see things that are not happening. I'm stepping on my own wire here. And you heard her say earlier, you asked her, what's your goal for this club? And she said, we're going to do everything that the Libertarian Party is not doing. And that was a really strong answer. And it kind of, I see myself in that. So like, I know I've been like teasing you about a pep talk, but you are the future of this party. And I really want you to own that strength because it's an amazing thing. So thank you.
No, thank you.
So back to stereotypes and naming names. So we have an image problem, right? So there's this idea that we're racist, or that we hate the poor, or that we greedy. And I suppose, I could stand here and tell you, oh, it's not true. It's just not true. And it's not, but I'm sorry, but sometimes a little bit, it kind of is. And, now stick with me here because it's going to be a little bit cringy, but then we're going to find some hope on the other side, right? Because when we take personal responsibility and we lean to the fact that there's a way to overcome it, we find that strength and we can overcome it. So first, the cringy part. The first name, Chris Cantwell. Who? The crying Nazi, that guy. All right, so Chris Cantwell, the crying Nazi, was part of a viral video that went all over the nation from Vice Media, and he was marching in Charlottesville, chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and identifying openly as an anarcho-capitalist with, a blog that you can find anywhere. If anyone Googles his name, the word libertarian is right there with it. Yikes! So, enter Tom Woods of the Mises Institute, and let me remind you, I'm not naming names to attack the people. I'm just looking at the ideas behind it so we can see if there's a way to take personal responsibility for that and then lean into the transformation. So Mr. Woods gets on his podcast and he tells Mr. Cantwell, quote, "You've been saying a lot of things that I wish I could say, but for diplomatic reasons and for the fact that I'm too busy to open up more civil wars, like I haven't burned enough bridges with the rest of mankind already, to read that you've done it and to see how many Facebook shares you are getting, I say, well, the task has been accomplished." I'd like to thank this microphone for protecting us from that quote. Hello? All right. I'm gonna just turn this
Sure,
up so it doesn't start squealing at us.
Don't worry about
You got a
it.
natural loud voice. It's not a bad thing.
Don't worry about it. All right.
All right, if it starts squealing, we'll like yank it out of the wall or something.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'm not even gonna finish the quote. You all get the point, right? And it doesn't need to be drilled into the ground because we're not here to like trash people or, anything like that. We're just here to say, or at least I'm just here to say, that people like Tom Woods, Jeff Deist, Walter Block, Lou Rockwell, Ron Paul, Hans Hermann Hoppe, their voices have been amplified and those messages are out there. And when people wonder, are these stereotypes true, and they start looking for them, they get the idea that it is. And it isn't exactly like that happened by accident, right? Because there was a concerted effort in the 1990s to kind of build bridges with the disenfranchised right. And we all know what happened next, right? So the point of this, though, is that these are think tank professionals. So these are people who are considered credible voices. These are people who present as academics. These are people who are perceived to have a kind of credibility based on their academic credentials and the way that they present, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to throw economics under the bus either. I'm just here to say that when economic narratives are used to justify racism and classism, then we're blurring lines that get cringy. So these people have a narrative about the grassroots, right? The idea that our unprofessionalism and the combative way that we sort of speak back to these narratives that are kind of embarrassing to us are the reason why we keep failing. So it's those grassroots people, it's those bohemians, and let's be clear, this was a concerted part of that paleo strategy. If you look back to the writings in the early 90s, it was basically the hippie types, people like me, people like Vermin, people like Brianna, that they said were, I don't even want to go there, it's just not pleasant to think of being spoken of like that, right? So when the winners write the history book, of course they describe us as combative, right? When those people are winning and they describe the way that people like us reacted to being presented as racists and poor shamers and things that were antithetical to who we are, of course we're combative of that, right? We're sick of having these things said in our name. And when they are, oh, by the way, besides being winners, they literally are lately describing us as losers, right? But I want to kind of, the thing is that we're starting to win. We are starting to win in ways that we haven't been able to do in decades. Sorry, my little segue here is getting kind of awkward because my notes are... This is called success. So let me tell you about some grassroots wins of the past few years. So when I was chair of Outright Libertarians, one of the first things I looked at was, why is it if this party has been so gender and sexual minority inclusive since the 1970s, why is it when we post on our page, our posts are like flooded with attacks on transgender identity and just really cruel and abusive speech that we had to delete from our page so it didn't like prevent us from reaching out to the people that it was my job to figure out how to reach out to. And I started like kind of analyzing it, and we looked at it and we realized, the non-aggression principle has never actually been deployed to defend gender and sexual minority people. It has been used as a weapon to justify, policing the restroom, right? And granted, if you're a business owner and that's your restroom, yeah, you do get to decide who's in it. But the state is the initiator of the harm that compelled a person to have an identity listed on their state documents that they did not choose. That was an initiation of force to an infant that did not get to consent, right? And then when that infant grows up, we're now having the state again initiate force to hold us accountable to that assigned gender, right? So the non-aggression principle actually tells us that that was not okay, that transgender people have guns pointed at them and are being forced to conform to a gender that is not theirs, right? And we came up with the world's gayest political quiz and the Get Your Laws Off Our Backs. And it seems so simple in retrospect. Why had no one made a list of the reasons why the non-aggression principle justified gender and sexual minority freedom? Well, guess what? We did that. And at the 2014 convention, I walked around and I placed all these flyers. And I remember people running up to me, oh my God, this is amazing. I have never seen anything like this before. Like, when you see the list, like, it's a long list of ways that the state was the initiator of harm, and like something shifted in the air, and that was a win for us. And they started to fight us, and the combative narrative started to continue unfolding, and these people are losers or whatever it was, right? Right on the heels of that, the Povertarian Caucus came, and I remember again, this was actually kind of like my Brianna moment. This was also at the Columbus convention, and I had made this flyer that said, it was a picture of Milton Friedman, and it said, I'm a liberal. He has this quote, I'm a liberal in the classical sense. And this is before I was really even sure that I was an anarchist. I was actually like embracing, I was leaning into my Adam Smith or whatever. And I walked around placing this flyer, and I could hear like people like flipping out that the word liberal was even spoken on a convention floor. Like hushed whispers, like, oh my gosh, and I heard the people's rattling, and like one person even like ripped it up, and like it was really like, and I was having like an almost panic attack like Brianna was having earlier, right? Because I knew that I was challenging, I didn't quite know yet like how sort of, I don't know what the word would be, almost like rigidly bureaucratic it was that you didn't break that sort of right-wing think tank narrative. And in retrospect, I see why it was like that. But anyway, my point is that was a victory, right? Because that night in the lobby of the hotel, over 20 people came down and held the first Povertarian Caucus meeting. And we started finding an identity and reclaiming that sort of, the idea that like, we heard of the bottom-upness. The people that are suffering the most from an economy that is dominated by coercive actors are the ones who are the most poor, right? And so the libertarian message, if it isn't for us, it's not for anyone. You know what I mean? And there was a real sort of shift that took place. And that culture shift has continued ever since then, and we've been winning for a while now. So the next thing I want to kind of talk about is how that culture shift is continuing to unfold, because standing up for gender and sexual minorities, and then the Povertarians came, and then I started to become aware of like, Siri thinks I'm asking her question, the way we present ourselves. There was this pressure to like, if you don't present with the suit and tie, then you're embarrassing us. And who does that harm? That harms gender nonconforming people, that harms people, just anybody that doesn't present in the status quo way is like sort of blocked out by this cultural pressure. And why should that be, right? Are we not the party of the anti-establishment voice? If people are suffering, again, shouldn't they be able to find their voice here, if anywhere at all? So suddenly, presentation norms became a battleground, and the Audacious Caucus unfolded from that. But I don't want to get into that too much, other than I'm going to do some analysis here on cost per vote and some actual, well, you'll see. So I don't have the year here. I suppose it was 2018 when Larry Sharp ran for governor here.
Yes, right.
All right, he spent $80,000 and he got 1.56%. So that spending is 84 cents per vote. So Larry Sharp spent 84 cents per vote. James Weeks got 16% in his race. I don't have the number of votes here, but it works out to 3 cents per vote. So 84 cents per vote versus 3 cents. And Larry's presentation is the professional, James Weeks is considered the audacious. So if James Weeks had spent 3 cents per vote and had $80,000 to spend, that would have translated into 2.6 million votes, which would have made him the second place winner in the governor's race had that been. Now, I know what you're all saying because this is exactly what I told my team. That's apples to oranges because we're comparing a two-way race to a five-way race. We're comparing a statewide race to, what's he running for?
It was sheriff, right?
Sheriff, a county level race. I'm sorry, he had ran for two different things, so yes, it was a county level race, right? Granted, that is apples to oranges. We don't have many examples to look to, so it is what it is. But let me read to you now what Chrissy Wickers wrote following her Ohio State House race in District 77 there. Chrissy is an audacious personality, but her team talked her into switching gears midway through her race. So she had real-time experience of the difference in the way that her audiences reacted to her. She wrote, now that I've had it, and this is what she wrote after her race. Now that I've had a few days to decompress, I want to go through what happened in my race. We did a lot wrong, and even more right, but I'm going to start with what we definitely did wrong. She wrote two things that I'm not going to quote here, and then this was her point number 3. We tried to fit in politically. I dyed my hair brown, I wore pantsuits, I maintained politeness at all times, I spoke articulately, and guess what? It didn't work. I did all that against my better judgment. Ohio, my district specifically, hates typical politicians and political correctness. I got the most attention when I was myself. I never thought I'd say this, but fuck respectability politics. I'll come back to this in a minute. And one more example that we came up with is even from the old parties. Mike Gravel ran an audacious campaign recently for president. I don't think his presentation is audacious, but his messaging was. He used Twitter to really kind of poke sore spots in his party's rhetoric, and he raised millions of dollars from that. So this formula works, and it's a culture shift in this party that I believe that we should lean into. Now, I want to stop here and pause because I heard something earlier that really resonated with me. I tried to speak from my heart because I think that that matters. And so I'm not suggesting that if someone isn't audacious, then don't try because it's going to come off as fake. I'm not saying that if someone who, like Miss Altman, who speaks from her heart and presents not audacious, you know, she's not wearing a, Nazi punks fuck off shirt.
Not my Liberty pen, though.
Right? But she's fucking awesome, just like she is, right? So if that's your gig, then like do it and lean into it. But if it's not your gig, and your gig is Nazi punks fuck off and a mohawk, then rock that and speak from your heart, and it will resonate with people. And the real strength of us sort of like discovering the entire like spectrum of our heart and soul is that different voters, different ones of us can reach different people. And the more different ones of us there are, if your rhetoric is very left-leaning, then lean into that because you can reach progressive voters that are having an anti-authoritarian moment. If your rhetoric is more right-wing think tanky, then lean into that because you can reach right-wing populists who voted for Trump and are looking for an anti-authoritarian message. You can reach those people. So I'm not saying that we should leave behind anybody who like previously was animated by this totally not Nazi, not racist propaganda. You know, those people matter, right? But everyone else matters too. Like everyone has something to benefit from libertarian ideas and a world set free. We all stand to gain from that. So it isn't my job as chair, as your wannabe chair, to tell you how to present or what rhetoric you should use. My job is to have my finger on the pulse of American politics and kind of present that back to you clearly in terms that you can implement on the ground. So this is my message. The bottom unity narrative is working. It's allowing libertarians who used to hate each other to now work together. We're seeing them actually pop up in comment threads and defend each other when they used to attack each other. And we're seeing pragmatic presentation working next to audacious presentation and loving that. And we're seeing that it's working at actually inviting more people across the space. And I'm really excited for the Golden Quills Libertarian Club because I feel like this meeting space that you have here on a college campus, and I think the opportunity that you have here in a democratic stronghold city is to really demonstrate what these new ideas can look like and the power that they can have. So I wish you all of the success. I'm so excited for you. I want everyone here to know that we have clipboards back there because one of your first actions, I believe, is going to be a signature drive for our next speaker. And I also want to remind you all that there's an after party, so if you have any more questions and you want to talk to me more, I would love to answer any of those questions. Or if we have time right now, I'll answer questions right now too. But also after party. Yes?